Somebody just put hands on Lil Pump in public, on camera, and the footage is everywhere. Here's what happened. A man who has spent a decade daring the world to test him just got tested. The clip leaked, the internet exploded, and the full story, who threw what, why security wasn't enough, and what this says about where Lil Pump actually stands right now, is wilder than the headline. Let's get into it. Right now, as you are watching this, footage is circulating the internet that has the entire hip-hop community in a chokehold. A raw, unfiltered, completely unscripted video shows Lil Pump, one of the most polarizing rappers to ever come out of the SoundCloud era, in what can only be described as one of the most chaotic altercations we have seen from him in recent memory. People are losing their minds online. Some are saying Pump finally got what was coming to him. Others are going to bat for the rapper completely. But here is the thing. The story you have been told, it is not the full story. Not even close. And the version of events that went viral, it was engineered to make you click. Let us break this down from the very beginning. Now, before anything else. And we need you to really pay attention here. You need to understand exactly what it is you just watched. Because the footage that began spreading rapidly across platforms like Hot New Hip Hop, WorldStar, Instagram, and Facebook was not telling the story that the headline suggested. The clickbait machine, and we all know how powerful and how ruthless that machine is, had already done its work long before most people ever saw a single frame of the actual video. By the time the clip reached the masses, the narrative had been completely flipped on its head. Headlines were screaming that a fan had smacked Lil Pump, that Gazi Garcia had been on the receiving end of a public humiliation, that the tables had finally turned on the man who has spent the better part of a decade being the one doing the confronting. But the footage tells a very, very different story. The actual viral incident in question stems from a Tuesday evening live stream that Lil Pump was doing, alongside popular streamer Clavicular, set in Miami, Florida. Now understand something fundamental about Lil Pump and live streaming. These two things go together like gasoline and a lit match in a locked room. The man has been a fixture in streamer culture for years at this point, whether it is appearances alongside Vitali, collaborations that spiral wildly off script, or just showing up in Miami and being exactly who Lil Pump is. The combination of Pump and a live camera has historically produced content that nobody is ever prepared for. But this particular stream was about to get a lot more interesting than anyone in that room bargained for. During the live stream, a shirtless man, described by witnesses and those present as being in a crazed state, attempted to aggressively push past Pump's security detail to get directly to him and Clavicular. And you might be asking yourself, how does something like this even happen? How does someone get close enough to a rapper with a full security presence to create a situation like this in the first place? The answer is the chaos of the live stream environment itself, the fluid, unpredictable nature of who is in the space, the crowd energy that shifts and swells without warning. All of those factors converged into the perfect storm for what was about to happen next. Security moved in to manage the situation. But Lil Pump, and this is the part that every single person sharing this clip needs to pay attention to, did not wait for security to bring things under control. Pump stepped in himself and delivered a direct punch to the heckler's head. The footage captured the entire sequence of events. And within hours, less than hours really, it was everywhere. WorldStar had it, Instagram had it, TikTok had it, Facebook had it, and the comment sections that followed. Absolute total pandemonium. Thousands of opinions formed in real time based on a clip that most people watched without any context whatsoever. And here is where the story becomes genuinely fascinating, because this is the exact mechanism that social media has perfected. Clickbait culture has a well-documented and thoroughly shameless history of inverting narratives in order to maximize engagement. Rapper smacked by fan generates incomparably more clicks than rapper punches heckler on live stream. One version makes you feel like you witnessed a downfall. The other just makes you feel like you saw Lil Pump being Lil Pump. And so by the time the clip reached the overwhelming majority of people who shared it, a completely different story had taken root in their heads. One where Pump was the victim of an unprovoked attack, one where a fan had finally made him pay. That story was a fabrication, a carefully constructed, algorithmically rewarded fabrication built on top of real footage. Now, the debate around whether what Pump did constituted a sucker punch or a justified response to a credible security threat is very much alive and ongoing. Half the internet landed firmly in the camp that Pump escalated a situation that trained security personnel could have handled without him needing to be involved. The other half argued that when someone is aggressively bypassing your security in what appears to be a crazed state, you do not wait around to learn their intentions. You act, and both of those perspectives, when examined honestly, carry genuine weight. What we can say with absolute certainty is this: no major credible outlet, not TMZ, not XXL, not Complex, published a report stating that Lil Pump was the victim of a new fan assault with leaked footage in 2025 or 2026. The narrative of Pump being smacked was a manufactured story layered directly on top of a real incident, one in which he was, without question, the aggressor. But we can also say with certainty that the way this entire incident unfolded, the chaos, the live environment, the immediate viral explosion, the narrative inversion, is a pattern we have seen from Lil Pump not once, not twice, but throughout the entirety of his public life. Because here is the thing about Lil Pump that gets buried every single time one of these clips surfaces. This man is not an anomaly. He is not a quiet, reserved human being who occasionally stumbles into chaos. He is someone who has been gravitating toward, generating, and surviving chaos since he was a teenager in Miami, uploading music to SoundCloud with his best friend. The clavicular livestream incident was not a departure from character. It was a completely natural continuation of a very, very long story. The reactions to this footage were instant, and they were polarizing in a way that only Lil Pump can truly deliver. And the reason the polarization exists, the reason some people immediately defended him and others immediately condemned him, is because neither group was wrong. Both reactions make complete sense when you look at the broader canvas of who this man is and what his career has looked like. Lil Pump has always lived in that space between he went too far and he was completely justified. And the camera has always been positioned perfectly to capture every single second of it. But if you want to understand why this moment hit the way it did, if you want to understand why this is not just another viral clip, but part of something much bigger and much more documented, then you need to stay right here. If you came to this video genuinely believing that the clavicular livestream incident was some kind of out-of-character moment for Lil Pump, some surprising deviation from the personality of a man who is otherwise calm, measured, and conflict-averse, then what we are about to walk through is going to completely and permanently reframe how you see him. Because Lil Pump, born Gazi Garcia on August 17, 2000, in Miami, Florida, has been colliding with chaos since long before most of his current fans were old enough to have a social media account. And while each individual headline makes it sound like a one-off explosion, the truth is that there is an unmistakable, well-documented thread running through all of it. Let us start in December of 2017. Pump is in Connecticut performing Boss, one of his earliest breakout records, in front of a crowd that is fully unhinged with energy. The show is electric. And then, a fan in the crowd allegedly threw an object directly at Pump's face while he was mid-performance. Now, most artists in that situation would stop the show, signal to security, and let the professionals restore order. Lil Pump is not most artists. He hurled his microphone directly back into the crowd. The show ended immediately, and Pump later addressed the situation on social media, expressing frustration at being disrespected, but defending his reaction in its entirety. That clip went viral. If that sentence already sounds familiar to you, it is because you are beginning to understand the pattern. Now let us take a turn that most people do not see coming when they start cataloging Pump's history of chaotic public moments. Because not everything in this story is aggression. In 2018, Lil Pump was performing at the Wireless Festival in London before a massive crowd, and mid-set, a fan in the audience appeared to suffer a seizure. Without any hesitation, without even a half second of deliberation, Pump stopped everything. He called for paramedics. He urged the enormous crowd to make space. He waited until the situation was fully handled before the show resumed. The internet genuinely did not know what to do with that, because it did not fit the version of Lil Pump that the memes had built. And yet there it was, captured on video, undeniable, and completely real. That moment matters enormously in the context of this conversation, because it is a reminder that the portrait of Lil Pump that gets assembled from viral clips and clickbait headlines is almost by definition incomplete. The man is more complex than the narrative. He always has been. But then the chaos returns, as it always does. In 2021, Lil Pump slapped a man known as Diablo at a party. Not a random fan in a crowd, but someone he knew personally. Diablo later went on record in interviews to give his side of the story, saying the confrontation stemmed from disrespect, while simultaneously downplaying the public nature of the embarrassment. Pump responded on social media. The clip spread everywhere. The cycle, as it always does, completed itself. And then there is the Colby Covington incident in 2024, which has to be one of the most genuinely unbelievable things ever captured on a live stream. And we say that with full knowledge of what the internet has produced over the years. During a live stream, UFC fighter Colby Covington, a friend and collaborator of Pump's at that time, placed him in a rear-naked chokehold as a supposed demonstration. Pump tapped multiple times. Covington kept going, and Pump passed out momentarily on camera in front of thousands of live viewers. The internet erupted with immediate outrage. Covington took heat from every direction, but Pump, being Pump, later explained that he had signed a waiver, that he genuinely wanted to experience what a rear-naked choke felt like, and called Covington his brother without apparent hesitation, because again, of course he did. And since this video is titled Footage of Lil Pump Smacked by Fan Just Leaked, we would be doing you a massive disservice if we did not point out that Pump himself, on camera, on the record, in a sit-down podcast conversation, admitted to catching his own share of hands. On the BS Podcast episode 44 with Jake Paul, Pump described getting into a physical scuffle with Jake backstage and walking away very much on the losing end of that exchange. So the man is not a stranger to getting hit. He just typically does not volunteer that information to the internet. Now let us talk about the incident that gave the world one of its most enduring Lil Pump video artifacts, the Miami International Airport confrontation in December of 2018. This is the footage that spawned the legendary "ordered to calm down" clip that has lived rent-free in the internet's memory ever since. A baggage handler reported that a bag tagged with Pump's real name, Gazi Garcia, was reeking of marijuana. Pump and his manager, a man named Dooney Battle, were pulled off their flight after they denied ownership of the bag, and the situation rapidly escalated into a full shouting match with TSA officers and police, every moment of which was captured on body cam footage in extraordinary, excruciating detail. Both Pump and his manager were arrested and charged with disorderly conduct. The body cam footage went immediately viral and ignited an internal review by Miami-Dade police. And then, in a plot twist that felt almost deliberately scripted for the Lil Pump universe, the charges were dropped entirely. No marijuana was ever found in the bag that had been tagged with his name. He walked. Again, what is truly remarkable when you lay all of these incidents out side by side, the Connecticut mic throw, the London seizure stop, the Diablo slap, the Covington choke, the airport meltdown, and now the clavicular livestream, is that they do not just form a highlight reel of drama. They form a portrait of a man who has operated at a frequency that most human beings simply cannot sustain for a week, let alone a decade. And yet here we are in 2026, and Lil Pump is not only still in the conversation, he is still generating the conversation, which raises the question that everything we have covered so far has been building toward. Who is Lil Pump, really? Not the meme, not the clickbait headline, not the viral clip, but the actual human being. Stay with us, because part 3 is where this gets genuinely fascinating. By now you understand the chaos, you have seen the pattern, you know that the Smacked by Fan headline was a fabrication layered expertly on top of a real and genuinely wild incident. You know that the clavicular livestream was not an anomaly, but the latest chapter in a very long and very documented story. But to truly understand why the internet cannot stop talking about Lil Pump, even in 2026, nearly a decade after his breakout moment, you need to understand the complete picture. Where this man came from, what he actually built, how he pulled off one of the most audacious business moves in the history of recorded music, and where he genuinely stands right now when the cameras stop rolling and the clips stop spreading. Lil Pump, real name Gazi Garcia, was born in Miami, Florida on August 17, 2000. Housand. He was expelled from Charles W. Flanagan High School in 9th grade for fighting. That detail is not a footnote. That detail is the origin story. And if you listen to what he told Jake Paul on BS Podcast, episode 44, the account of how music became the alternative path is a lot more raw and a lot more cinematic than any biography has given it credit for. That is the origin story in its rawest, most unfiltered form. He moved in with his father, linked up with his childhood friend Smoke Perp, a relationship that began when Pump was just 13 or 14 years old, and started uploading music to SoundCloud. The early tracks were lo-fi, hyper, and completely unpolished. And then, in 2017, one of the most extraordinary things that can happen to a human being happened to a 17-year-old from Miami. A song called Gucci Gang, produced by Big Head and built on one of the most aggressively repetitive hooks in the history of recorded music, peaked at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and eventually went quintuple platinum. His self-titled debut album, released on October 6, 2017, debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200. He was a minor, but here is the piece of this story that almost nobody leads with. And it is, without question, the part that deserves the most attention. Because Lil Pump may have executed one of the most brilliant and consequential business moves in modern music industry history. And he told the entire story himself on the podcast. Pump had initially signed with his label for approximately $300,000. $300,000 for the kid who would go on to have a quintuple platinum record. But here is where the story turns extraordinary. Because Pump was a minor when he signed, and a contract signed by a minor is required to be certified through the court system in order to be legally binding. Those papers never went to court. Once Gucci Gang went supernova and Pump realized the contract had not been properly ratified, he walked away from it entirely. The label, suddenly holding a 17-year-old whose song was at number 3 in the country and who legally owed them precisely nothing, scrambled. And they came back to him with an offer of $10 million to re-sign. He accepted. He went from $300,000 to $10 million because someone forgot to file the paperwork. And on the podcast, he acknowledged openly that because of what he did, every underage rapper who signs a major label deal today gets their paperwork processed through the court system within the same week. He changed the standard operating procedure of an entire industry. He was 17 years old, and while we are talking about things from that era that the world never got to hear, Pump dropped another revelation in that same conversation that had the internet genuinely shaken. A Justin Bieber collaboration, recorded, finished, and then buried by label politics before it ever saw the light of day. According to Pump, the whole thing came together organically. He was in Los Angeles, connected with Bieber on Instagram Live. And after the stream, Bieber sent him a song. Pump recorded on it. And then the machinery of the music industry swallowed it whole. The world never got to hear what Lil Pump and Justin Bieber made together. And if you are sitting there thinking that collaboration would have been something, the numbers say you are almost certainly right. Now let us fast forward to 2026. Because Lil Pump at 25 is a very different person than the 17-year-old who stumbled his way into a $10 million record deal. He is sober, he is working out, he has spoken publicly about his faith after surviving a serious rollover car crash in August of 2025, a crash in which his SUV flipped in heavy rain in Florida, and he escaped by breaking a window, later crediting God for his survival and stating that the experience brought him back to church for the first time in years. He has spoken about stepping back from certain corners of the music industry due to discomfort with what he describes as occult-like elements he observed. A claim that, whatever your take on it, speaks to a man who is doing some very real and very personal reckoning with who he is and what he wants his life to look like from here. And yet, he is still touring, still making music, still one of the very few artists from the original SoundCloud rap wave who is consistently pulling audiences internationally. He said as much himself on No Jumper, naming Lil Uzi Vert, Cardi B, Trippie Redd, and Tekashi 6ix9ine as the only members of that entire generation still doing it at a global level. And he made sure the point landed with the exact kind of sharpness that only Lil Pump delivers. And in the same breath, without any apparent hesitation, he went directly at Lil Tracy, claiming Tracy did shows in 2017 and then relocated across the country because he could no longer afford to live in Los Angeles. That is not a vague subliminal. That is not a soft subtweet. That is a specific named deeply personal diss delivered on a public platform with zero apology attached to it. The No Jumper clip spread immediately, as every Lil Pump clip inevitably does. On the BS podcast, Pump also reflected on where he stands in the broader landscape of hip-hop, saying plainly that he could have dropped Gucci Gang and never released another song, never stepped into another studio, and have been financially set for the rest of his natural life. He has enough platinum records. He has enough touring pull. He has enough of a legacy from the era he helped define that the royalty checks and the overseas dates alone would sustain him indefinitely. But he keeps making music. He keeps showing up. He keeps going, not because he has to, because he says he wants to. That is the full picture of the man behind the headline. A kid from Miami who got expelled for fighting, who bought a gun at 14, who turned a $300,000 deal into a $10 million deal before he was old enough to vote, who had a finished Justin Bieber collaboration sitting in a vault that the world has never heard, who stopped a concert in London to make sure a stranger in his crowd received medical help, who punched a heckler on a live stream and watched the internet reverse the entire story in real time, who survived a car crash in heavy rain in Florida and walked away crediting divine intervention, who is, by his own account and by the touring receipts, still one of the last men standing from the era he helped create. The footage leaked. The story got flipped. The headline brought you here. And Lil Pump is still standing in the middle of all of it, exactly where he has been since 2017. Whether you love him, whether you cannot stand him, or whether you exist somewhere in the complicated and increasingly crowded middle, the one thing that is absolutely undeniable is this: you cannot look away. And in the age of the algorithm, in the era of the 30-second clip and the inverted headline, that is perhaps the most powerful thing any artist can say about themselves. Lil Pump makes you look. He always has. And something tells us he always will.